They just don't
Okay.
care.
Let's pivot into our second topic of conversation today, because this is another thing I wanted to ask you about. So, John Wilner wrote a piece recently about the basketball contributions, and look, it's not as if it's a negligible, like completely irrelevant amount. It's small potatoes compared to the football money, right? But still, there is value. There is value for a conference of getting teams into the tournament, having them make runs. The money does come back eventually. It actually gets worked out in a weird way. I was reading a piece, I think, in like the Arizona Sun about UCLA and USC's March Madness units. They will come back to the Pac-12, but it gets done in like 5 years down the road.
Yeah,
essentially, it's very weird. It's very strange. It can amount to, a couple $1,000,000 per school, but if you were to get to a place where you could send 6 teams to the big dance instead of 4 and have 2 of them, make Elite 8 runs in any given year, that sort of stuff is valuable, right? Like when Oregon State and USC have made Elite 8 runs, that sort of stuff. It's worth something. But the basketball question here, when George Kliavkoff came in as commissioner, one thing that he made very clear was he wanted the conference and he wanted the schools to prioritize football in a greater way than they were before. Whatever he told them, I think is working out pretty well, because the schools have made better hires, they've committed more money, and the conference is in a really, really competitive place. They just had 6 teams in the top 25. But basketball-wise, Josh, I just feel like there's no standard at some places. Like Jared Haas is going back to Stanford to be the head coach next year.
Unbelievable, unconscionable.
Why? It makes no sense. Here's the other thing too. There's a perfect hire ready and waiting. His name is Mark Madsen. He's a Stanford grad. He's the Utah Valley coach. He just won the WAC championship, which was the 11th best basketball conference in the country for men's basketball this year. They've been really good. They didn't have a great history before he got there, but he has turned them into a winner. And instead, it just feels like there are times where they keep Mark Fox around, they keep Mike Hopkins around, they keep Jared Haas around at all these schools because they're just not willing to step up and make the financial commitment that you need to some of these programs. There was an entire piece about Cal basketball, about how they, God. I mean, it's like, that's embarrassing.
So you know what's funny? Do you remember a good dear friend of ours, Conzo Martin, coached at my alma mater, University of Missouri? Do you remember who he had at Cal? Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown went to Cal, people.
Yeah, I know. Everybody forgets that.
Ivan Rabb, who was actually considered like a lottery pick, or like a first round pick for a while. It didn't really pan out, but like he was a pretty high level talent. They had Wallace and Matthews, I think, were the guards they had. They had like a really good team. They had a really, really good team. And they were a complete joke this year. And I'll tell you what, this is the difference. Look at the Big 12. And I'm just using the Big 12 as the best basketball conference, but think about the coaches in the league. What the worst team in the league this year was Mark Adams, longtime assistant. That team was in the Sweet 16 last year. Mark Adams, first year as a head coach, stayed there forever. The worst team in the Porter Mosier at Oklahoma. Not sure it's going to work out, but my God, the success that he had at Loyola, right? Think about the other coaches. Mike Boyd in Oklahoma State had the number 1 pick at Oklahoma State. And look, that's a tournament team at any other conference. It just had a really difficult schedule play this year. Bob Huggins, they were they were the 7th place finisher this year in the Big 12.
Bob Huggins is one like
a Hall of Famer. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And guess what they're doing after their first round exit? Athletic director Ren Baker has said there's going to be a conversation about Bob Huggins' future with Bob Huggins. They made the tournament. They were in the
standards.
But guess what?
Standards.
They're like West Virginia. They love Bob Huggins. They have come at me for saying maybe it's time. The standards in this league, like you mentioned, are off the chart. And I'm not even saying you have to do that, right? But look at the SEC, Spencer. When I was there, we had Billy Kennedy. At A&M, we had Andy Kennedy at Ole Miss. We had Georgia had they had Mark Fox, I think, right? He was at Georgia for a minute. I want to say it was Mark Fox was there. Tom Crean obviously had some success elsewhere, but Kermit Davis just got out of the league. Chris Beard is now at Ole Miss. The standards in this league have gone way, way, and I think across basketball, way up. And the Pac-12, like, could people tell you who Utah's head coach is? A lot of people could not tell you who Colorado's men's basketball coach is. A lot of people couldn't tell you who Oregon State's men's basketball coach is. Good luck for Cal and Stanford either. People don't know who that is. And so the whole point is, like, USC probably too. I mean, I know Andy Enfield, obviously.
I think people know Andy Enfield.
People know who he is.
If you said FGCU, they'd say, "Oh yeah, that guy."
Right. But people don't know the names of who these coaches are.
Right.
And that's the problem, is there is not enough investment in basketball at these schools. And I understand investment in football, but you can do both. You can invest
I know.
in both.
And
awesome.
I would like for them to do both. I've been talking about it for weeks here on the show that, like, I would love to be able to talk more basketball, but the interest is not there because it feels like the school's interest is not there. And think about, two good hires in the conference at the LA schools who are unfortunately departing, but like Andy Enfield, right? That's the sort of hire I want to see you making as a conference consistently. Mark Fox was at Georgia from 2009 to 2018. What did he do there? What did he ever do? And then Cal said, yeah, this is the guy we're going to hire to lead our program. And Jared Haas, like, I understood the hire at one point in time, but you're keeping him around. I'm like, what are the expectations here? Why do you not have those sorts of standards? Clearly they're capable of ratcheting it up. Half of the conference was in the AP top 25 and the college football playoff rankings when the 2022 football season came to a close. There's no reason you can't have that for basketball, but you have to care, number one, and you got to make the right hires. And I look at coaches who, make these runs with small schools like FGCU, and Andy Enfield has been a successful coach at USC. He's been to an Elite Eight. They make the tournament consistently. Now, they're asking questions about him right now because he hasn't been able to make a deep run, but he's brought in high-level players. Like, that's the sort of hire. Mick Cronin, Cincinnati, comes over to UCLA.
Yeah,
and they weren't.
He's an amazing coach.
Yeah, I'm a huge Mick Cronin fan, but I'm just unclear as to why everybody else just seems content. And by the way, a really interesting case study in this is going to be Oregon next year, because Dana Altman is going to go into year 3 potentially of not making the tournament. And
I think I view them more like I view the good school. Like, I don't think Oregon has, and you follow Oregon very closely. I don't think they have much of a problem. I think because the Nike tie, like, I think Oregon's a strong basketball player.
I agree. But see, here's the question. Dana Altman has missed the tournament 2 years in a row. He's got an elite recruiting class coming in this year. You got Mookie Cook, KJ Evans, Jackson Shellstad. They also added a transfer shooting guard from the JUCO ranks who's a sharpshooter, and that's what they were missing this year.
They always get good transfers. Also.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think he's built them into a pretty strong brand. But then the question will be, if next year goes awry and you miss the tournament again, Dana Altman's been there for 13, 14 years at this point. Like, would you consider it? Is it a big enough brand to attract that caliber of coach? I think that's a question, but it would also be a question of standards, because he's never won fewer than 20 games, but is that the bar, right?
Standards is the issue too. I also think this is where visibility hurts them, because the volume of basketball games, there are a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of Pac-12 basketball is on the Pac-12 network. A lot of it is. And the top level games that are on ESPN are not the most accessible, right, in terms of time slots. I think UCLA and Arizona played how many times this year? 3? Was it 3 times?
Yeah, 3 times.
I think all of them were 10 o'clock. I believe all of them were 10 o'clock Eastern time starts. And so, and I also think, wasn't one of the Pac-12 semifinals on the Pac-12 network?
I'd have to go back.
I believe it was. I believe one of them was. And so that is an issue they have, because I have made one of my big points of college basketball is, look, if you're a top level recruit, like, you can go anywhere actually and be on TV, right? Cade Cunningham at Oklahoma State. Like, you can really just go anywhere you want to at this point. James Wiseman at Memphis, wherever else you want to go with that. But is that the case for Pac-12 schools? UCLA, yeah, they're going to get a lot of exposure. Arizona, sure, a lot of exposure, and Oregon too. But like down the line, like if you're a kid from Corvallis, Oregon, who ends up being the number 1 player in the country, you can't go to Oregon State and guarantee you're going to be on TV a ton. I mean, they might flex a lot of your games and whatnot. They could, but like, there's a lot of guaranteed games in the Pac-12 network too. And look, I know they're trying to change that, But I think that's an
By the
issue
way,
too.
the Oregon UCLA Pac-12 tournament semifinal was on Pac-12 Network.
Just, and I know it's not their fault right now, unimaginable. Like,
Well, yeah.
Freaking imaginable.
Yeah, like a quarterfinal or a first or second round game or whatever in tournament. I totally get it.
Yeah,
right.
Toss
like
them up
that.
there.
That's what it's for. But a semifinal, I'm.
Well, like every single game the ACC plays, Wake Forest against Louisville, who gives a you know what, is on ESPN, and then UCLA's playing Oregon on the Pac-12 network in a semifinal. And I'm watching Georgia Tech and FSU. They got 10 wins between them two, and they're on ESPN.
Yeah,
on Tuesday.
no, I won't push back on that because I think that's
visibility hurts.
I think that's ridiculous, and I just wish they would care a little more. I think Oregon would be an interesting case study, but I just look at it comes down to coaching hires, right? Because you talked about, right?
Big 12 is so much more in basketball than it does in football.
It's 100%, because you only have 5 guys on the floor, right? Like the relationship that those guys have with your head coach is greater than probably any specific football player has with his head coach, except for Caleb Williams.
We've had Ed Orgeron and Gene Chizik win national championships last 15 years of football.
Right, and then the
only bad coach I can think of in college basketball was like I actually thought Kevin Ollie was fine. I thought what they did at UConn was disgraceful to him, but Kevin Ollie's the only coach I can think of that wasn't that good and won a championship.
Right, but even a program like UConn, right? When a coach wins, it should buy you some time, but it shouldn't buy you unlimited time.
Forever.
Ed Orgeron won a national championship. He was fired. He was shown in the door a couple of years later. Kevin Ollie won a national championship. He was fired a couple of years later because they didn't like where it was going. And that's, I think, how you quote unquote fix Pac-12 basketball. You have got to have schools invest in it more. And look, I think
this is one of the Big 12, I think, would be rising tide lifts all boats. That's the one thing about this is, like, if Utah went to the Pac-12, you could only watch your team suck in a sport for too long before somebody at the university is like, all right, I will pitch in a ton of money. We will hire whoever. The recruits will get better.
I don't know. I think Cal is about to test the limit of that assumption.
Yeah, Cal. Yeah, you're right. I think Cal might actually test the limit of like how bad it can get. But I think the Big 12, when you're in such a good league, you see all Kansas State succeed, all these Oklahoma State, like you see all these Texas Tech almost won a national championship. Lubbock, Texas almost had a basketball national championship.
Yep,
they have a decent tradition, but like, my God, like, you can do it anywhere, and they're not.
Yeah, and I think what we've seen in the tournament this year, and really it's just been a growing trend as more mid-majors have made runs and more upsets have happened, is that there's no excuse for not having enough talent if you're a Power 5 institution. Like, I just watched Fairleigh Dickinson go toe-to-toe with a school with Purdue. I wish it would change. Maybe one day it will. Maybe we will get our wish. Josh Neighbors is the host of Locked On Big 12. Catch him on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts Monday through Friday. Great insight as always, Josh.
Love it. I'm not rooting for the demise of the Pac-12. I think the sport is best when all the conferences are together.
There's a small part of you that wants it.
There's a small part of me. I want the Big 12 to succeed, but also in an ideal world, we all have conferences and we're all pulling together. I don't want to see Washington State fans and Oregon State fans not in a big league. They deserve it.
I know. I completely agree. We
all love our teams the same way, Spencer. We do.
Yes. Let's agree on that. Let's end with agreement today. That's always fun. Appreciate everyone listening. See you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.